So I'd like to introduce, we've got two speakers this evening. I'm going to introduce the first of those now. So I'm going to introduce Jamie Hulland, who works for Devon County Council and is the Transportation Strategy and Road Safety Manager. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about emissions from road transport in Devon, current transport patterns and needs, and how COVID is changing some of those traffic statistics. So I'm going to hand to Jamie. Jamie's going to share some slides with you, and then I'll explain what's happening next after we've heard from Jamie. Over to you, Jamie.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm Jamie Hulland. So my role in the County Council is to basically develop transport strategies and plans for communities across the county to help, I guess, do a number of things: support development that's in the local plans, promote healthier, more active lifestyles, and clearly decarbonisation is now top of my list of things that I need to be focusing on and working towards. So that's in a nutshell what I do in my day job. And I'm going to run through some slides today just to kind of give you an idea of how travel patterns and travel behaviour has changed over the years, and also a little bit about how what impact COVID has had also. So if I just share my screen. So I'm afraid I'm going to be sharing quite a few graphs, which I'll try and explain, but hopefully they will be of interest. So I will be covering some figures on rail use, bus use, cycle, and traffic across the county. So it's a big subject. I could be talking for hours, so I tried to be selective with what I cover. I think just as a recap, this is something that was covered at a previous session. That transport's the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Devon, and I think its emissions from transport has fallen the slowest of any sector of the economy. So between 1990 and 2019, total greenhouse gas emissions were reduced by 44%, and transport has only reduced by only 5% over that period. So it's a big challenge. And this is another slide that you may have seen before, and this is about which vehicles are emitting and for what reason. And so you can see on the graph on the left, the majority of those emissions come from cars, with similar sort of proportions between vans and lorries. And then you can see that on the graph on the right, commute is probably about 15%-ish. Business use, which is travelling for work purposes, relatively small, and other uses. So that includes leisure, retail, those sorts of journey purposes. So starting with rail, Devon's really well covered by a rail network. It's got 5 rail lines. It's got the main lines from Exeter to Waterloo. It's got the London Paddington line, which runs through to Plymouth and beyond to Penzance. And then we've got the branch lines between Barnstaple and Exeter, and the Paignton to Exmouth line, which serves a large number of communities. So actually reasonably well served by rail. And in response to that, we've been trying to make the most of this by delivering new railway stations. So in 2015, Cranbrook and Newcourt were delivered. At the current time, Marsh Barton Station is on site being constructed. We've got Mid Devon have been leading on the Cullompton railway station, which has got development funding and is progressing. Oakhampton, the line to Oakhampton will be open by the end of the year. And we've got a bid that's currently lodged with government to try and make the case for Tavistock to Plymouth as well. So really trying to make the most of the rail that we've got. And it's been a bit of a success story as well. So these are figures supplied to me by GWR. And these, I should stress, these are Devon local journeys. So those that are on the branch line services, so Exeter to Exmouth, Exeter to Barnstable, Exeter to Paignton, and on the Plymouth to Gunnerslake line. So there's a couple of Cornish stops on there, but it doesn't. I don't think it has a massive bearing on the results. But the key thing there is that is a significant level of growth, 144% growth in journeys over that period, 2002 to 2019, from about 2 million passengers a year to over 5 million. So it is something that has been very successful. Just to kind of focus in on the impacts of COVID on rail, you can see in the green on this chart, this is passenger numbers going through the gate line at Exeter Central Station over the course of the year, and you can, if you focus then on the yellow plan, that is the impact during 2020 2021. So had a huge impact, and that was obviously the impact of the message of not discouraging use of public transport, which has obviously had a massive impact. What it is worth pointing out on there, so it has recovered in Devon by the first week of September last year to over 70% of the same week in 2019. So I mean, that's still 30%, down on where it was in previous years. But I understand from GWR that is actually performing extremely well compared to other parts of the country. And you can see on the purple is now in June this year, it's recovered to over 80% of recovery. And that's despite the fact that there hasn't been a significant amount of commuting in that period. Some of the reasons for that is that Devon has particularly strong leisure and education markets, and the demographic of commuters are generally younger people who perhaps may not have access to a car, and therefore more need to use rail more often. So I guess there are some encouraging signs for its recovery, but still significantly down on previous. Moving to buses. Now this is a bit of a busy map, but that shows all of our bus services that cover the county, massive road network, and we carry approximately 24 million passenger journeys on that network. So if you compare that to the rail figures, which I was just giving, about 5 million on local rail services, there's 24 million passengers travelling by bus in the county. But the difference there, if you can see, if I just toggle between the two, the blue lines are those services that are actually run commercially. So these are the services that bus operators choose to run because they are profitable services. So what that actually shows is there's a significant parts of the county, rural parts of the county, particularly rural Torridge, Dartmoor, as you might expect, large sections of Mid-Devon, East Devon, rural East Devon near the border with Somerset, and parts of South Hams where I would describe as bus deserts. And so really that's where we fill in. The county council is then funds and supports those services, because while they may not be profitable routes, they are socially necessary for a large number of reasons. And in terms of access to education, health and well-being, allowing people to access key services in these rural communities. But as a result, they're quite costly to run, and as a result, they are. It's quite a fragile network. So so about 80% of our bus mileage is commercial and concentrated over those concentrated areas. So this is how bus passenger patronage has changed. So you can see 26 million passengers in 2011, which compares to 2019 figures of about 23 million. So there has been a reasonably flat profile, and in fact it's actually reduced over that period by about 12%. So passenger numbers going down. I should point out the yellow areas is those that are concessionary fares. So these are the for people who don't have to pay for bus travel, And part of the reason for this decrease is partly because the eligibility changed from 68 to 6 from 60 to 68. So we lost a large chunk of the younger, perhaps more active pass holders, so clearly that would have had an impact. Other factors that may be considered are things like changing shopping patterns and maybe changing makeup of rural areas as well. But there have also been service cuts. I showed before the non-profitable services, they need to be funded, but there have been cuts to funding, which means that some services have inevitably needed to be cut, which are estimated to lose approximately 120,000 passengers per annum. And what you can see there is an even more dramatic reduction, again, similar to rail, in that we saw a big falling off a cliff with the messaging around avoiding use of public transport as a result of COVID. So in both these cases, quite a big challenge to recover from that situation. Moving to cycle growth trends. Here we've got, I've just shared, these are our rural leisure trails, hugely popular across the county. So the list of the sorts of trails I'm talking about here is shown on the right. Steady growth, some of them have grown quite significantly. You can see the green line there for the Tean Estuary, where we've improved the routes and the connections between Dawlish and the Exe Estuary and Dawlish Warren. We see numbers growing gradually and generally very well used. The figure on the left is the sort of numbers you'd expect to see daily on these routes. But I think what the most interesting thing is the impact of COVID, unlike with public transport, has seen a significant increase in use of these trails. And again, that's something that you might want to reflect upon, that message around people getting out, being more active, taking daily exercise. Clearly, we've seen the impacts of that on a lot of our leisure trails. Moving into Exeter, similarly, we've seen steady growth, traffic cycle numbers in the city, where we do. There is a lot of existing cycle network, and it's been expanded in recent years. Again, you can see there some of those routes, those more popular routes have grown, have spiked significantly from, say, just over 800 to almost 1,200 vehicles a day, comparing 2018 to 2020. And this is just to give you an idea of a more sort of detailed look in the urban area of Exeter. So the black dotted line shows what the profile is over during 2019 and 2019-20. You can see the seasons at the bottom. So you might expect to see higher numbers during the spring, summer periods, which is why it kind of has that up and down curve. But what's interesting here is, again, despite the fact that a lot of people, the commuting patterns have reduced, more people working from home, but what we have seen is higher numbers of people cycling, which is showing the green line, which is during the COVID period. So again, cycling is proving resilient has been resilient during the pandemic, and has actually increased despite the fact that more people are working from home. Moving on to traffic finally, and this is the trend, both sort of at a Devon wide level and comparing with national. So you can see there the green, the red, and the orange lines all show basically a growing trend since 1994 of gradually increasing volumes of traffic on our roads. And these major rural roads and roads are generally the kind of the A roads that we see. The difference between DFT is DFT use slightly different data than the roads that we've selected for our ones, which are the DCC counts. But you can see there the green and the orange line in particular, they do mirror things quite closely. So sort of, yeah, between 1994 and 2014, it's probably gone up best part of 20% increase in volumes. And then you can see quite a severe drop as a result of COVID as well from 2019 to 2020. What's interesting in Exeter is that's the opposite trend in Exeter, where the main corridors have actually reduced by about 10% over that period from 1994 to 2018, 2019. So that's a steady reducing number on the Exeter's corridors. And I guess some of the things that we think is actually we've seen increasing use of rail and certainly bus in the Exeter urban area, and cycling, which has helped to try and manage the traffic volumes on Exeter's roads. And then this is just a sort of a daily profile, which you can see here. The dotted line was pre-COVID, and then the red was during the lockdown, or at least after the first relaxations of lockdown. So you could see the volumes significantly reduced, but as you can see now, 8th of June, we're still not completely back to normal. But in the case of the urban areas, the volumes are back up to near to where they were pre-COVID, which again, reflecting on the equivalent reduction in use of public transport. That's a real challenge that we've got ahead. And this is just the same graph, but for rural roads, and that shows that it's gone even greater in rural areas where people have really returned to their cars in their volumes. It's much higher than pre-COVID levels already, and that's with people still working from home. But what's interesting is that flatter profile where you're seeing during the middle of the day the volumes are higher as well. And again, we've seen quite an increase in things like deliveries and vehicles travelling around during the middle of the day. And then this final slide is really just highlighting how things have changed during the pandemic. So we had pre-COVID, so that's the 100% levels, and then we saw it reduce by quite significantly by about 60% as soon as lockdown went in. And then we've seen gradually things returning back through as we return to normal. So I guess from sort of January time, we were at about 30% down on previous. This is peak hour now. So this is again confirming that the commuting patterns are still quite different in that morning peak hour. 30% down this January. But that's gradually climbing back up again, and so we're back up to about 10%, just 10% lower than pre-COVID levels at the moment. So that's the end of my slides. I've probably gone on a bit too long, but and I've probably shared too much information. But hopefully it was a helpful overview of some of the challenges and how things have been changing over time across the county.
That's super helpful. Thank you, Jamie.